Okay, welcome back. Now that we've taken a look at advertising types and the various types of appeals we can use, we need to look at where we're going to put the advertisement. So let's have a look at some of the major advantages and disadvantages of different media, and then we'll end by taking a look at the media mix. Let's start with newspapers. All right, what I would tell you is this: from a promotion perspective, newspapers, in my mind, are done. If you take a look at who reads them, they're typically not read much by the type of consumer we're going to go after for the most part. It tends to be an older consumer, tends to be a lower income consumer, not the type of consumer that we're most interested in as a marketer today. So when you're looking at newspaper, when would you want to use it? Well, if you're doing something that's really local, you're a local store, then it makes sense. If you're a local car dealership, it makes sense, okay? Because the beauty of newspapers is they give you some degree of immediacy versus some of the other ones. You can often get co-op advertising from some people, from some of your suppliers to do advertisement in there, or you could tie it into a local event. That gives you a bit of a benefit, okay? The real downside is for who you reach in today's marketplace, it's just really expensive to use a newspaper. So if you take a look, magazines, well, I think newspapers are dead, magazines are right there along with them. Um, Again, it's a demographics thing. Younger demographics don't read them. You do find that the demographics that do read them, again, older, lower income base, they're not the kind of consumer that we want to go after. Uh, if you need something that's got a strong reproduction requirement, so you want a really strong color photo, then they make a bit of sense because they're much better than newspapers for that. You can be very selective in who gets it because magazines are becoming very demographically or very targeted demographically. Now, the one thing that's the positive for magazines is they are doing more and more electronically. So if you think about them as electronic distribution, then that targeting really pays off. If you've got a market that will look for something like that, that's the key. Your market has to be looking for something like that. So this is going to be an owned media kind of idea that we talked about in the last class. If they're willing to look at your owned media to get information, perfect. If they're not a good option for you. Okay. Some of the disadvantages your textbook talks about: long-term time commitments. Usually you're talking about buying space in something that's not coming out for weeks, sometimes months into the future. You get a very limited distribution side to it today. There's a lack of urgency in it. Okay. There's all sorts of issues that have made magazines not exactly the greatest option for you today. Uh, they're not even putting a lot of content in them. Some of the biggest complaints I see about magazines are the wedding editions or the fashion editions, where it's 99% or not 99%, 90% advertising and 10% content. People are just buying them to look at the pictures. The issue is, are they going to buy the product itself? That part you have to see about. Okay. Next up, we've got radio. Radio's still got some legs to it. Not as many as it used to have. Again, you're finding the younger demographic shying away from it. They have other options, whether it's streaming, whether it's listening to their own music, whatever it is. So local radio is tougher to do, okay? But the beauty of local radio is it's relatively low cost. So if you want to do something to get your feet wet, it's perfect. It's immediate because you can do a radio ad today and probably get it scheduled into the run tomorrow or the next day, okay? So you've got some potential there. You can take it wherever you want to go, so you can use it in multiple markets. That's a good part for it. It does give you some carryover. So because if a good song leads into it or a good news report leads into it, you get some carryover from that for people to listen to you. The downside of radio, here's one of the biggest ones. Today, people are really visual. There's no visuals with radio because it's all sound life. It has a really short advertising life. Radio ads, once your campaign's done, generally you want to get rid of them. They're tough to recycle. Okay, people rapidly tire of them because they're played so many times during a campaign. Okay, why are they played so many times? Because in order to achieve the goals you're after, you have to run a high frequency of them, and that's to make sure you catch the consumers multiple times. Somebody's not going to remember your message after only one listen to the ad. They need multiple listens, but in order to get that one person to hear it multiple times, you have to run it so frequently that you tend to burn out your audience. Okay, there's a lot of distractions from the background sound. So, if you've got something else going on, you're driving, you're at home, you're at work, that's causing distraction. You might not hear the ad, okay? And there's also all sorts of commercial clutter. Hey, I'm sure all of you have listened to local radio, and you know that they'll run 10 minutes of commercials at one time so that they can give you that, 30-minute or 40-minute space of music where they're free riding it. Because of that, you can easily get lost in the clutter. Television. Okay, so television kind of breaks down into two markets. On one side, you've got network TV, which is seeing a steady decline in viewership. And on the other side, we've got cable outlets that are very targeted. They're seeing a bit of an upswing. Now, the other thing to keep in mind with television is this. Well, there's two things. Number one is we're spending more time online now than we do on TV, watching TV. So that probably tells you don't want to put all your eggs in the television like you used to, or as many eggs into the television basket as you used to. The second thing is that we're now streaming all this TV stuff online so that it's tougher for people to avoid the commercials. It used to be if you DVR'd it or recorded it, you could skip on through the commercials. You can still do that, but with more people going to streaming, as we get more people going online, we're showing them the commercials, and we've come up with a way so that it's difficult for them to blast through them. Okay. So why do you want to go TV? Well, if you're talking network TV or streaming, you got a wide reach. Even if you're talking cable TV that allows streaming, you'll have an equally wide reach. On a cost per thousand basis, or a CPM, it's actually not bad. They're pretty low cost compared to newspapers or magazines, okay? Television offers you the ability to show a demonstration of your product because it has live action combined with sound. So you've got that piece to it. You can do immediacy. You can usually get, television going fairly quickly. The entertainment carryover, which is why the price of a TV ad is highly dependent upon where it's being broadcast. It's being broadcast during the lowest ranked show on network TV. It's not a very expensive buy, but if it's a Super Bowl where it's got a high audience reach and it's a very rich audience compared to the normal TV audience, it's got a high price tag attached to it. Okay, and the more entertaining the live event or the taped event is, the more value you're getting out of it because people are paying attention to it and go, oh, hey, I remember seeing that. Classic example of that, Apple's 1984 ad that ran one time during the Super Bowl. It's a classic because more people claim they saw it than were watching the Super Bowl that day. But what it did do is it set up this memorable piece because of when it was broadcast, okay? All right. Next thing you have to look at are the disadvantages. Well, much like radio, people quickly forget TV ads, so you have to repeat them a lot. The second thing is, especially our Gen X and younger consumers, they're really skeptical of TV ads because they grew up on them, and they know people are using puffery, which means that they're expanding out the benefits of the product beyond what they actually are. So you have to be careful with that. TV, despite having a low cost per thousand, typically has a high campaign cost. That it'll cost you millions of dollars to produce a TV ad, and then equally millions of dollars to reach or to buy the advertising time for it. So it can have a high initial cost, but on a cost per thousand basis, it's not too bad, okay? You've got long lead times for production unless you're doing something really quick and dirty. All right. And you get clutter because again, in every half hour of TV shows, there's 8 minutes of commercials. You're likely to get lost in there. The one that we're really interested in is social media. Okay, that's the fastest growing area. Whether it's Twitter, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook if you're older, whatever the method is, that's where it's fast growing because that's where people are spending the majority of their time. It also allows you to reach a really narrow audience. Because of the analytics we can collect off the user base, we can really target down a social media or an online ad much more than we can a traditional ad. Okay, traditional ads are about this effective in terms of narrowing it down. We can get down to about there with the internet and social media, and we could even go down to an individual consumer if we wanted to spend the money. Okay. Doesn't take much to create content, so we've got a really short lead time. Moderate cost. You can do internet advertising or social media advertising much less expensively than other methods, okay? And you can engage the consumer. Remember, this is with social media. It's the first time where we've had conversations going back and forth between the media and the people involved, and the media and the marketers, okay? Some of the disadvantages, well, you still have a group of consumers that don't use social media, but that's going to change. So in your career span, that's not going to be an issue. Same thing with the click-through. We've pretty much eliminated pieces of that so that we know when we don't rely as much on the click-through, let's put it that way, okay? And our measurement has all improved. So we're probably much better measuring what's going on online social media than we are using any of the other systems. And that's just because of the nature of the information that's collected by YouTube, by Facebook, by Google, and the analytical models that are out there. The last area I'll talk to you about is outdoor, okay? Billboards, signs beside the sides of the road, beside the road. Here's what I can tell you about outdoor advertising. Oh, the bus benches too, or bus signs or whatever. The retention rate on this is really low. The hangover effect of people remembering campaigns you ran is really long, if they remember them at all, okay? So if you're looking for this to kind of get people to do something, no. This one is just very good at reinforcing. It's just another way of reinforcing. What you're hoping to do is cut through the clutter. How does it do it? By repetition. If you're going to do outdoor advertising, you generally take a lot of them because you want it to be seen numerous times by the consumer. And you want it to be seen in somewhat unusual places so it cuts through the clutter, okay? Cost, not that bad. I mean, it's moderate. It's your better bet still online, social media. Flexible, a bit. You can do some things with outdoor media in terms of making them 3D, adding some lights, some special effect, even some video, as long as you're not creating a safety hazard. Yeah, that's good. Geographic selectivity is really strong because where you put the billboard up is where people are going to see it. So within that range, okay. Biggest disadvantage is though, you can't do complicated messages, which is why it's good for reminder, drink Coke, okay? Because your messages have to be short. People only see it for seconds at a time, all right? You can't do any kind of demographics on it. It's all based upon how many people go by each day. Okay, so if you're looking for volume, if you've got a product that requires the maximum number of a wide range of consumers see it, outdoor is the way to go because that's what it's designed for, is volume. Okay, and there's lots of noise. Traffic signals, cars in front of you, everything else that's interfering with your ability to see and react to that billboard the way the marketer wants. We still see them. Are they effective? No. No, and you're seeing fewer of them. The reason why is outdoor advertising just isn't a good value for dollar for most companies. So it's not worthwhile them going into it. And it's another declining area in the spectrum of advertising. I've taken a look at all those. And you're probably saying, well, geez, of all the ones he's talked about, the only one that has any real interest is kind of online, followed by maybe TV. Keep in mind, though, that depending upon who your consumers are, and depending upon how much you know about where they look for ads, what they want to see in ads, all of those types of things, you may want to use some outdoor, some newspapers, some magazines, some radio, some TV, and some online social media. Now, how do you figure out what to do? Well, take a look at your preferences of your consumer group. Where are they spending their time? If you've got a younger group, I'd put most of my effort in online, probably TV next. And then I'd take a look going down. If I were in Grand Forks, I might look at putting some billboards up because the students are likely to see them if that's who your target market is. Okay? But what you want to do is take account of the cost that goes into this. Some of these are measured in cost per thousand. So how many dollars per thousand people that see it? Radio, newspapers, magazines, TV, billboards fall into that category. And also some of the online media. Some of it's cost per click. Okay, so you ask them to do an action. Do they click it? If they do, then you pay more as an advertiser. Lots of cost per click. What you're trying to figure out are three different things. What's the reach? How many people are seeing this ad? Okay, so is it 1,000 people? Is it 10,000 people? Is it 100,000 people? How many people are seeing it that fall into your target market? If it's a large number, it's probably a good area to go into. Then you have to ask yourself, how frequently do they see it? Because again, it's not a one-shot deal. It has to go through multiple times. So is the average person going to see this 5, 6, 10 times? The higher the frequency of repetition, the more likely it is to have an impact because it'll cut through the person's clutter or the clutter facing the person. Okay, so we look at the frequency. And then the last thing we have to look at is how selective can we be with this? How selective is the audience? And that's where online social media really shines, because we know through all the data collected how effective that is at being selective. Now, TV through the Nielsen's and radio through the records they collect, they can also be pretty strong. Okay, magazines, yeah, newspapers, yes, they can get a pretty good sense, provided there's not a lot of passel on. Outdoor, no. We just know that 5,000 cars go by, and an average car has 2 people in it, so 10,000 people are going to see it per hour. Okay, those are the types of things that you want to look at. So you've picked your mix. You've picked how you're going to do your advertising. Now you have to figure out what kind of schedule do you want to use. And scheduling breaks down into 4 different types. The most common is called continuous. So if your campaign is going to run from June 6th to June 20th, for example, that's 2 weeks, and you want to run a continuous pattern, you'll say, okay, I want a continuous pattern. It's going to be 14 times a day. Fantastic. Okay, it's a steady run. Steadily runs 14 times a day. Now, you could run a flighted piece. And what a flighted piece says is, it's really good for sales, by the way, okay, where you start low and then you push up. So if you want to do, we've got a sale starting next Tuesday. What we'll do is we'll flight it. So right now we start to build awareness by mentioning it. And then on Sunday, we'll flip to a much higher frequency for Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesday to remind people the sale's on. And then we might go into more of a continuous role for Tuesday through, let's say it goes to the following Monday. Okay, we'll go into a more continuous role at that point because we just want to keep reminding people we're there. Okay, so that's flighted. Pulsing is pulsing is what I've just described to you. It's a combination of continuous and flighting. Okay, so we do some flighting, then we go into continuous and we repeat again. Flighting is where we run ads heavily at a certain period, as usually as a run up to something. Okay, all right. So flighted, quick run up. We run them at a greater frequency. And we might do that. Let's say we run a sale the second week of every month. The first week of the month, we always run this kind of flighted piece to go forward on that. Okay. And then there's seasonal. Seasonal ads are run around major holidays. Okay. So, around go back to school is a good seasonal. All right. End of summer. Then we'll go into Halloween will be the next one. And then it'll be Thanksgiving and then Christmas. And then we'll come out of that and we'll go to Valentine's Day and then it's Easter. Okay. Those are seasonal runs. Okay. So it's continuous, flighted, pulsing, or seasonal are your options. Okay. That concludes the number 2 video today. When you come back, we'll talk about public relations and sales promotions.